Hello everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you here in person. I'll be back from the funeral over the weekend, and we'll be back with each other again on Tuesday. I want to review parts of the light because we'll have an assessment on Tuesday. Don't worry, we'll have a study session beforehand, and everyone will do just fine. So I have faith in you, and I really believe that you're all going to do very well. So let's go over parts of a light, and of course what the different lights are. So first, right in front of us, I have 3 of these. Think about what these lights might be called. Remember, we did this in class on Tuesday. So if we take a look at this light, and I loosen this part right over here, here's a front end view. I'm going to get the camera a little closer so that you can see this. So, anybody figured out what this light is? It's a source 4. So a source 4, or a source 4 ellipsoidal, is an ellipsoidal reflector spotlight, or ERS. Ellipsoidal, as we talked about in class, is because of the shape of the reflector. I'm going to remove the lens, and we're going to look into the reflector, and I'm going to show you, again, what all this looks like. So, if we look deep into the heart of the light, right now you see nothing. I'm going to set the light up so we can get some light in here. Right now you see silver. That's because there are shutters in the way. As I remove these, we start to be able to see inside the light. And what we can see here is the ellipsoidal portion of the ellipsoidal reflector spotlight. If I go around, what you're seeing is in the lamp housing, which is right back here. If I then dismantle this light a little further and take what's called the butt cap off, which is this piece right here, you're going to see the other end of the reflector. Now, before we go into the reflector, I'm going to show you different parts of the butt cap. So there's, of course, this brass screw, which is the retaining screw. There is the lamp focus devices, which are right here. And actually, if you look at this enclosure right here, it actually says flat and peak. This is like a little joystick, just how you would control a video game in an arcade back in the old times. You can actually move this, as you see right here. And then this is a loosening, and you can see how you can move it. So inside of here, we have a lamp. This is a very specific lamp. It's called an HPL. It's just the specific lamp code. You can see this piece is actually very similar, or sorry, simple, not similar. Right? It's just literally some clips and a lamp. If I can quickly remove this, sorry, it's a little stuck. Okay, so I've gotten this part unclipped. I remove this, and I simply pull the lamp out. Now, I don't touch this lamp because this is quartz glass, and quartz glass is possible to explode or to bubble out if it has contact with the human hand because of the oils that we produce. So, if you're in lighting lab or even in class, and you accidentally touch the lamp, all you need to do is tell us, and we can easily remedy that simply by wiping the lamp down with alcohol, which I'll do after this video. So, as promised, I'm going to take you into the heart of the reflector. So, we're staring down the back end of the light. Now, the lens has been removed, and we see the back end of the light. This is that reflector that we saw from the other end. Now, if I go back and I place this lens on the light, you're going to actually start to see the world in focus, but upside down. So if you look very carefully, right here, you're going to notice that this chair over here is upside down. And it's actually forming a lens, much like your camera's lens, or the lens of your eye. Now, I'm going to sit in that chair, and I can actually see the camera through the back of that light. Moving around the light, we see other elements. We've already talked about the lens tube or barrel and how it can be removed. It's held into place with a retaining screw or lens knob. So when I place a lens in, I can either place the screw down here or up here and twist to retain the lamp or the lens. I'm going to leave this in for now, and I'm going to redirect your attention to another lamp, or to another screw. One moment while I raise the camera. You should now be able to see this screw. Now, this is the same style screw, but does something radically different. This does something called barrel rotation. So if I back up, you can see that this actually allows me to rotate the entire front of the light by 45 degrees. Let's take a look at that same item from the front. So it allows 45 degrees of rotation. What this does is it allows me to get what's called a precision shutter cut. Precision shutter cuts are cuts that literally have pushed a shutter blade, which act like my hand, into the light. But if I want to get a very specific angle, I can rotate that barrel to a very specific angle that I couldn't otherwise get just by pushing these shutter blades in. As you can see, the shutter blades, I'm going to tighten that, are fairly limited in a range of motion. However, with the barrel rotation knob, I'm able to get many more adjustments. Now, for a moment, let's talk about why did I pick the Source 4 as the first light to show you. Well, quite frankly, the reason is simple. It's the most common and most important light in our inventory. The majority of theaters around the world have this light. So, let's talk about another couple of features. These are common between all lights and aren't unique to Source 4s. First that I want to show you is something rather large. This. Anybody remember what that was called? That actually is called the yoke. Now, not yolk like egg yolk, but yoke. Y-O-K-E. Yoke, like the yoke on an airplane, where an airline pilot pulls back or pushes forward, goes left or right, almost like a steering wheel. The yoke. Now, if I look closely, there's a handle right here. This is called the T-handle, or the tilt handle. And the reason it's called the T-handle is because it's shaped a little bit like a T. If we look at it from this view, you can see that when I turn it sideways, it makes the light and the yoke line up to look like a T. Another really important aspect is how the light hangs. And that's called a C-clamp. It's called a C-clamp because it's shaped like a C, and I'll show you that from the side view. This is a piece of foam padding to prevent you from hitting your head, but if you look, this is shaped like a C. This is what actually connects the light to the pipe. And the light holds on right here by gravity. This is called the pan bolt, or colloquially called the fuck nut, because electricians often would have a wrench on this specific nut, which is rather small, and the nut would break off in the wrench and they would yell the expletive, which is how it gained that colloquial name. Most theaters, if you call it the fuck nut, they'll know what you mean. If you called it the pan bolt, you might get a funny look. So, that's the ETC Source 4 from head to tail. Let's take a look at another light now. The next light I want to show you is a Fresnel. I'm going to crank down this, and we're going to drive to the other part of the room. Moving on from here, we're going back to the Fresnel. The Fresnel here, let me tip this up so you get a little bit better light here. The Fresnel has some defining characteristics. If we look at the Fresnel, we see all these rings. This is simply a safety cage here. This doesn't matter in the operation of the light. You see all these rings. And you can probably actually hear my finger going over the rings. They're ridged and they're actually quite deep. And what they do is they help concentrate the light. Remember how I said all these lights have things in common? They sure do. Take this part of the light. This is again the yoke. This is mounted to a floor plate rather than a pipe. Floor plate is just simply a piece of wood. But we have that U-shaped yoke. And we have the T-handle. Again, if I loosen this, it forms a T with the yoke. Now, Fresnels have a really special attribute that I want to share with you. So if we look at the back of this light, we have something really special. Can you see it? We have this handle right here. This is called the spot to flood knob, or the spot to flood lever. You can see right here it has an S, and right here it has an F. This actually allows us to zoom this light from being very small and very much like a spotlight to being very flooded and very wide, like an open-faced floodlight. It makes this light very versatile. It's a soft light, and this particular model is 2,000 watts and an 8-inch lens on the front. Now, something else I really want to show you, I'm going to crank the light up, or the camera up, is I want to show you on the inside. So on this particular light, if I pull here, I can release the front lens and open. Now you can see the back side of that Fresnel lens here. Now here, we have the lamp. This happens to be a 1,000 watt lamp because it's used for classroom purposes so that I don't blow the circuit breakers. But in a theater, we would use a 2,000 watt lamp, which is a little bit larger. So let's look at the inside of this light. Simply has a polished reflector, and we have the lamp, we have the lamp and we have the lens. It's that simple. Now I'm going to take a moment again to show you the zoom action. So right now, the light is at full flood. As I move this to full spot, the lamp moves further away from the lens, which allows the light to concentrate. So think about as the light is pulling away, the light is becoming more and more narrow, more and more straight ahead. As I flood the light, that you a better angle at this here so you can see the light moving. See how it's retracted, and see how far that has retracted. And again, coming back towards you. Now, there are other couple of features that I want to point out to you that apply to all of this. One, this is the tail, the whip, or cord or cable. This comes directly out of the fixture and terminates in a plug or a connector. This happens to be a stage pin plug. It almost looks a little bit like a European style plug with these large brass pins. There's a hot pin, a neutral pin. These are interchangeable. The center taller pin is called a ground pin. Again, it's a 3-pin connector. They make these in several different sizes. This happens to be the 20 amp. There's a 50 amp and then a 100 amp that's much larger. These are on all lights. Moving lights may have a different end or connector on them, but most theatrical stage lights will have a stage pin end. There's another type of light I want to show you next. And bear with me as I hop over my cord here. So back to our cart, I'm going to uncover this light. This is a very special light. This is known as a source 4 PAR. Now, in class, we talked about several things with the source 4 PAR. So one is, like every other light, it has a C-clamp, a yoke, a T-handle, right? But it produces an oval-shaped beam. Now, the oval beam is important for many reasons. One, it's the only light that doesn't produce a circular source by default. But two, it uses interchangeable lenses that can be rotated. So there's actually a rotation ring right here that if I move, will spin that lens to change where the oval is. Now, if I spin this enough, I can actually remove this lens and show you the inside. There we go. I just simply press on the release lever here, tilt the light down, and the lens comes off in my hand. You can see this lens here. This happens to be what's called a medium. And it's medium because it has the wider, larger facets. A wide lens would have twice as many of these facets, and they would be bumpy out. These are bumpy in. There's also two forms of narrow lens. Those forms of narrow lens actually have either beveled glass for narrow spot or completely clear glass for very narrow spot. Now, if we look inside this light, we'll see the very brightly polished reflector. That's called a parabolic reflector, which is based on the shape, the parabola. So it's a parabolic aluminized, because it's an aluminum reflector, or PAR, P-A-R, parabolic aluminized reflector. Now there's a much older style of this light, which I've shown you in class before, but I'll pull up again. This light is essentially the grandfather of the source 4 PAR. This is called a PAR-CAN, or PAR 64. This light uses a much larger lens. It's also parabolic and aluminized. goes out, you have to throw away the whole back end of the light. This light serves the same purpose, but the light is reused over and over and over again versus being a one-time use only. Now, all of the lights that I've shown you today can use gel to color the light. One can use gobos, which is of course the source 4. Gobos are what I showed you in class that create those textures and those patterns, and they're made out of steel. And one, our Fresnel, can zoom. So, to recap, we've gone over 3 different lights today. Really 4 if you count the second example. We've gone over the source 4, which is this light right here. We've gone over the source 4 PAR, which is the more modern version of the PAR 64. We've gone over the Fresnel. And we've gone over its many parts and pieces. We'll have an assessment over this material on Tuesday. Again, like I said, with a study session beforehand so that you can feel most confident about this material. Now, as a reminder on assessments, you'll have one that's required, and for this one at least, one that's a free choice between A and B. One will be a short answer, the other is a multiple choice. And as we've discussed in class, there are benefits and disadvantages to each format. But the choice is yours for what you feel like most accurately represents your learning, because ultimately that's what these assessments are. To literally show me what you've learned. It's not about penalizing you for not knowing something. It's an opportunity for you to show me what you've been able to retain and what you have in your knowledge bank. So, I look forward to being back with you on Tuesday. Please have a safe weekend. Good night.